Have you ever wondered why the people closest to you seem to resist your help the most? Why your well-intentioned efforts to guide, change, or heal others often backfire, leaving you drained and them more distant than before? Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist who mapped the depths of the human psyche, discovered something profound about this universal human tendency. He found that our compulsion to fix others isn't really about them at all. It's about the parts of ourselves we cannot bear to face. Jung observed that when we frantically attempt to repair someone else's life, we are often projecting our own unhealed wounds, our own disowned shadow onto them. We become so focused on their darkness that we remain blind to our own. But what happens when you finally stop this exhausting dance? What transforms in your life when you cease trying to be everyone's savior and instead turn that healing energy inward? Today, I want to share with you Jung's revolutionary insights about projection, the shadow self, and the profound liberation that comes when you stop trying to fix others. You'll discover the 5 unmistakable signs that you've been caught in this psychological trap, the 3 hidden motivations driving your need to rescue others, and most importantly, the transformative shift that occurs when you redirect your healing energy where it truly belongs. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why the most powerful gift you can give another person isn't your advice or your solutions, but your own wholeness. The first sign that you've been trapped in the fixing pattern reveals itself through what Jung called the projection of the shadow. Picture Sarah, a successful therapist who spent years trying to help her alcoholic brother overcome his addiction. She organized interventions, researched treatment centers, and pleaded with him to change. Yet the more she pushed, the more he drank. What Sarah couldn't see was that her brother's addiction was a mirror reflecting her own shadow relationship with control and perfectionism. She was addicted to fixing others because she couldn't face her own need to be needed, her own fear of being powerless. Jung understood that we project onto others the very qualities we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. When you find yourself obsessively focused on someone else's flaws, you're often looking at your own disowned aspects. The lazy person you're trying to motivate might be reflecting your own relationship with ambition. The angry person you're trying to calm might be mirroring your own suppressed rage. The broken person you're trying to heal might be showing you your own wounds. When you stop trying to fix others, the first thing that happens is you begin to see these projections for what they are. You realize that your urgent need to change someone else has been a sophisticated form of self-avoidance. This recognition, though initially uncomfortable, is the beginning of true psychological freedom. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to control another person's journey, you begin to reclaim the energy you've been scattering and turn it toward your own healing. The second sign emerges through what Jung identified as the savior complex, rooted in our relationship with our anima or animus. Consider Michael, who had a pattern of dating women he considered broken or lost. He was drawn to partners who needed rescuing, convinced that his love could heal their trauma, fix their insecurities, and complete their lives. What Michael didn't realize was that he was trying to heal his own wounded anima through these relationships. His inner feminine was fractured, and rather than doing his own inner work to integrate these aspects, he sought wholeness through trying to heal the feminine in others. Jung taught us that we all carry within us both masculine and feminine principles, regardless of our gender. When these inner aspects are wounded or undeveloped, we often try to heal them indirectly through others. Men might try to fix women to heal their own anima, while women might try to fix men to heal their own animus. This creates relationships based on projection rather than genuine love. When you stop trying to fix others, you begin to see how you've been using relationships as a way to avoid your own inner work. You realize that the completion you've been seeking in healing another person can only come from integrating your own split-off parts. This doesn't mean you stop caring about others, but rather that you begin to love them from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. The third sign manifests through what Jung called the wounded healer archetype, taken to its shadow extreme. Think of James, a life coach who built his entire identity around helping others overcome their limitations. He gave brilliant advice, facilitated powerful breakthroughs, and genuinely helped many people. But James was secretly struggling with depression and felt like a fraud. He poured all his healing energy outward because he couldn't bear to face his own darkness. His expertise in fixing others became a prison that kept him from addressing his own psychological wounds. Jung recognized that many of us who are drawn to healing others are actually wounded healers ourselves. This isn't necessarily problematic unless we use our role as healers to avoid our own healing journey. When fixing others becomes compulsive, it often masks a deep fear of looking within. We become so skilled at diagnosing everyone else's problems that we remain experts in avoiding our own. When you stop trying to fix others, you're forced to confront the wounded parts of yourself that you've been neglecting. This can feel terrifying at first because you've built your identity around being the strong one, the helper, the one who has it all together. But this confrontation with your own wounds is where true healing begins. You discover that your greatest gift to others isn't your ability to fix them, but your willingness to be authentically human, complete with your own struggles and imperfections. The fourth sign reveals itself through the unconscious need for control that Jung linked to the ego's fear of chaos. Imagine Patricia, a mother who couldn't stop trying to manage her adult children's lives. She gave unsolicited advice, interfered in their relationships, and felt genuinely distressed when they made choices she disapproved of. Patricia believed she was acting out of love, but Jung would have recognized her behavior as the ego's attempt to maintain the illusion of control in a fundamentally uncertain world. When we try to fix others, we're often trying to fix our own anxiety about life's unpredictability. If we can just get everyone around us to behave properly, make good decisions, and avoid pain, then maybe we can feel safe. But this is an impossible task that only increases our suffering. The more we try to control others, the more out of control we actually feel. When you stop trying to fix others, you're confronted with your own powerlessness over other people's choices and journeys. This can initially feel overwhelming, but it's actually deeply liberating. You begin to understand that the only person you have any real power to change is yourself. This shift from external control to internal mastery is one of the most profound transformations you can experience. The fifth and most subtle sign appears through what Jung called the inflation of the ego through false transcendence. Consider Robert, a spiritual teacher who spent his time trying to awaken others to their divine nature, while secretly judging them for their unconsciousness. He positioned himself as more evolved, more aware, and more enlightened than those he taught. Robert's attempt to fix others' spiritual lives was actually feeding his ego's need to feel superior and special. Jung warned about spiritual inflation, where we identify with the archetype of the wise teacher or enlightened master, rather than remaining grounded in our human imperfections. When fixing others becomes our identity, we often lose touch with our own need for growth and learning. We become so invested in being right that we stop being real. When you stop trying to fix others, you're humbled by the recognition of how much you still don't know about life, about yourself, and about the mystery of human existence. This humility isn't a weakness. It's a doorway to genuine wisdom. You realize that everyone is walking their own path, learning their own lessons, and that your role isn't to be their teacher, but to be a fellow traveler willing to share your own authentic experience. Now let's explore the 3 hidden motivations that drive our compulsion to fix others, because understanding the why behind this pattern is crucial for breaking free from it. The first motivation Jung identified is the projection of our unlived life. We often try to fix in others what we wish we could change about ourselves. If you find yourself constantly trying to motivate someone to pursue their dreams, ask yourself whether you're avoiding pursuing your own. If you're always pushing someone to be more social, examine whether you're avoiding your own social anxieties. If you're trying to get someone to leave a bad relationship, consider whether you're avoiding leaving your own unsatisfying situations. Jung believed that we all carry within us an unlived life, full of potential and possibilities we haven't yet explored. Sometimes, rather than taking the risk of living these possibilities ourselves, we try to live them vicariously through others. We push them to be brave, to take chances, to make changes because it's safer than facing our own fears. When you stop trying to fix others, you're confronted with your own unlived life. This can be both terrifying and exhilarating. You realize that the energy you've been spending trying to change others can be redirected toward creating the life you actually want to live. Instead of being a spectator in everyone else's journey, you become the hero of your own story. The second motivation emerges from what Jung called the need to prove our own worth through others' transformation. Deep down, many of us believe we're only valuable if we're useful, only lovable if we're needed. This belief often develops in childhood, where we learned that love was conditional upon our ability to please, help, or fix others. As adults, we unconsciously seek out broken people to heal because their improvement becomes proof of our value. This creates a toxic dynamic where we need others to remain somewhat broken so we can continue to feel needed, while simultaneously pushing them to get better to prove our effectiveness. It's a no-win situation that keeps everyone stuck. We become addicted to the feeling of being indispensable, and others become dependent on our constant intervention. When you stop trying to fix others, you're forced to find your worth in something other than your ability to heal or help. This is often a profound identity crisis, but it's also a doorway to discovering your inherent value as a human being. You learn that you don't need to earn love through service, that you don't need to prove your worth through others' success. Your value isn't determined by how useful you are to others, but by the simple fact that you exist. The third motivation stems from what Jung understood as the attempt to heal our own childhood wounds through fixing others. Many of us who become compulsive fixers grew up in dysfunctional families, where we took on the role of the family healer, the peacekeeper, or the responsible one. We learned early that our job was to manage others' emotions, solve their problems, and hold the family together. As adults, we unconsciously recreate these dynamics in our relationships. We're drawn to people who need fixing because this familiar role gives us a sense of purpose and identity. But we're also trying to heal our own wounded inner child through these relationships. We hope that if we can finally fix someone successfully, it will somehow heal the wounds from being unable to fix our original family. When you stop trying to fix others, you're brought face to face with these original wounds. You might feel the grief of the child who couldn't save their parents' marriage, who couldn't cure their mother's depression, who couldn't fix their father's anger. This grief is painful but necessary. It's only by feeling these original wounds that you can finally stop trying to heal them through others and begin the real work of healing yourself. If you're finding this exploration helpful, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and share your own experiences in the comments below. The journey of psychological integration is not one we have to walk alone, and your insights might be exactly what someone else needs to hear on their own path to wholeness. Now, let's dive into the profound transformation that occurs when you finally release the need to fix others. This shift, what Jung would call a movement toward individuation, happens in stages and brings with it a radical reorientation of your entire life. The first transformation you'll notice is the return of your vital energy. Think about how much mental and emotional energy you spend worrying about other people's choices, trying to convince them to change, or feeling frustrated when they don't follow your advice. This energy is like water flowing out of a broken dam. When you stop trying to fix others, you suddenly have access to enormous reserves of life force that you can direct toward your own growth and creativity. Jung emphasized that psychic energy, like physical energy, follows the law of conservation. Energy that flows outward in attempts to control others is energy that's not available for your own development. When you reclaim this energy, you might find yourself suddenly motivated to pursue interests you've neglected, to take risks you've been avoiding, or to address problems in your own life that you've been procrastinating about. Maria noticed this when she finally stopped trying to manage her sister's chaotic life. For years, she had spent hours every week on the phone trying to help her sister solve various crises. When she set a boundary and stopped offering unsolicited advice, she was surprised to discover she had time and energy to return to the painting she had abandoned years earlier. The creative force she had been pouring into her sister's problems was now available for her own artistic expression. The second transformation involves what Jung called the development of psychological boundaries. When we're caught in the fixing pattern, our psychological boundaries become permeable and confused. We take on others' emotions as if they were our own. We feel responsible for outcomes we cannot control, and we lose touch with where we end and others begin. When you stop trying to fix others, you begin to develop what Jung would recognize as a properly functioning ego boundary. You learn to feel compassion for others without taking on their pain as your own. You can witness someone's struggle without feeling compelled to rescue them from it. You discover that you can love someone deeply while still allowing them to live their own life and make their own mistakes. This boundary development isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. Rather, it's about learning to love with what Jung called conscious love, rather than unconscious attachment. Conscious love allows others the dignity of their own journey, while unconscious attachment tries to control their journey to meet our own needs. The third transformation manifests as the integration of your own shadow material. Remember, Jung taught us that what we try to fix in others often represents our own disowned aspects. When you stop projecting these qualities outward, you're forced to confront them within yourself. This can be uncomfortable initially, but it's essential for psychological wholeness. David discovered this when he stopped trying to fix his friend's procrastination problem. He had spent months giving his friend productivity advice, organizational systems, and motivational talks. When he finally backed off, he was forced to confront his own relationship with procrastination. He realized that his friend's delays triggered his own anxiety about not being productive enough, his own perfectionist tendencies, and his own fear of failure. By integrating these shadow aspects, David became more compassionate toward both himself and his friend. He stopped seeing procrastination as a character flaw to be eliminated and began to understand it as a complex response to fear, perfectionism, and overwhelm. This integration made him more whole and more genuinely helpful to others, not through fixing but through understanding. The fourth transformation Jung would recognize as the activation of authentic presence. When we're busy trying to fix others, we're not actually present with them. We're present with our idea of who they should become, our agenda for their improvement, our anxiety about their choices. We're listening not to understand, but to find opportunities to give advice or point out problems. When you stop trying to fix others, you discover the profound gift of simply being present with someone as they are. You learn to listen without an agenda, to witness without judgment, to care without trying to control. This authentic presence is far more healing than any advice you could give or any solution you could offer. Jung understood that healing happens in relationship, but not through one person fixing another. Healing happens when someone feels truly seen, accepted, and witnessed in their full humanity. When you stop trying to fix others, you become capable of offering this kind of transformative presence. The fifth transformation involves the development of what Jung called differentiated relationships. When we're caught in the fixing pattern, our relationships are based on roles and functions. We relate to others as projects to be completed, problems to be solved, or sources of validation for our worth. We don't see them as complete, complex human beings with their own inner wisdom and divine timing. When you stop trying to fix others, you begin to relate to them as sovereign individuals. You recognize that everyone is on their own journey of growth and learning, that everyone has their own inner guidance system, and that everyone deserves the respect of being allowed to make their own choices, even when those choices lead to temporary pain or confusion. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to others' well-being. Rather, you learn to support them without trying to control their journey. You might offer resources when asked, listen compassionately when needed, or share your own experience when appropriate. But you do these things from a place of respect for their autonomy, rather than from a need to see them change. The sixth transformation Jung would identify as the emergence of true self-authority. When we're busy trying to fix others, we're often avoiding the responsibility of governing our own lives. It's easier to see what someone else needs to change than to face our own need for transformation. It's more comfortable to give advice than to take our own medicine. When you stop trying to fix others, you're confronted with the full weight of your own life. You can no longer avoid your own problems by focusing on theirs. You can no longer feel productive by managing their issues while ignoring your own. This confrontation with self-responsibility can feel overwhelming initially, but it's the foundation of genuine personal power. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires taking full responsibility for your own psychological development. When you stop trying to fix others, you reclaim this responsibility. You become the author of your own story, rather than a supporting character in everyone else's drama. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurs in your relationship with love itself. Jung understood that much of what we call love is actually need, projection, and unconscious attachment. We love others for what they give us, how they make us feel, or how they reflect our own desired image back to us. This isn't really love at all. It's a form of psychological parasitism. When you stop trying to fix others, you begin to discover what Jung would recognize as conscious love. This is love that doesn't need the other person to be different to be worthy of love. This is love that can witness suffering without rushing in to eliminate it. This is love that trusts the other person's journey even when it's painful to watch. This is love that offers presence rather than solutions, understanding rather than advice, acceptance rather than improvement. This conscious love begins with yourself. When you stop trying to fix others, you're forced to extend the same compassion to yourself that you've been trying to give them. You begin to accept your own struggles, your own imperfections, your own slow process of growth. You learn to be present with your own pain without rushing to eliminate it. You develop patience with your own journey. And here's the profound paradox Jung would appreciate. When you stop trying to fix others, you often become genuinely helpful for the first time. No longer driven by your own unconscious needs, you can respond to others from a place of authentic care. No longer projecting your own issues onto them, you can see them more clearly. No longer attached to specific outcomes, you can support them in ways that actually serve their highest good rather than your own psychological agenda. People begin to seek you out not because you have all the answers, but because you offer something much rarer, the gift of being fully seen and accepted as they are. They don't come to you to be fixed, they come to you to be witnessed in their full humanity. And sometimes, in that witnessing, they find the courage and clarity to make their own positive changes. This is what Jung meant when he spoke about the wounded healer archetype in its highest expression. The truly helpful person is not the one who has transcended all problems, but the one who has developed a conscious relationship with their own woundedness. They can sit with others in their pain because they've learned to sit with their own pain. They can trust others' process because they've learned to trust their own process. The spiritual implications of this transformation are profound. Most wisdom traditions teach that trying to change others is a form of spiritual violence, an attempt to play God in someone else's life. When you stop trying to fix others, you align yourself with what Jung would call the natural order of psychological development. You trust that everyone has their own inner wisdom, their own divine timing, their own perfect curriculum for growth. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent to suffering. Rather, you learn to respond to suffering from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity. You offer what you can offer without attachment to outcomes. You plant seeds without demanding that they grow on your timeline. You love without needing love to look a certain way. Jung understood that this kind of detached compassion is one of the highest spiritual achievements. It requires us to face our own need to be needed, our own fear of powerlessness, our own discomfort with uncertainty. It asks us to love without guarantees, to care without control, to help without fixing. In your own life, this transformation might look like allowing your adult children to make their own mistakes without rushing in to rescue them. It might mean listening to a friend's problems without immediately offering solutions. It might involve supporting your partner's growth without trying to direct it. It could mean working in a helping profession from a place of service rather than saviorhood. The freedom that comes with this transformation is extraordinary. You're no longer carrying the impossible burden of everyone else's happiness. You're no longer responsible for outcomes you cannot control. You're no longer exhausting yourself in battles you cannot win. Instead, you can focus your energy on the one life you actually have the power to change, your own. And as you do this inner work, as you heal your own wounds and integrate your own shadow, as you learn to love yourself with the same compassion you've been trying to give others, something magical happens. You become a living example of the transformation you've been trying to create in everyone else. Your own healing becomes a beacon that lights the way for others, not through what you say or do, but through who you become. This is the ultimate paradox Jung would love. By stopping our attempts to fix others, we often inspire the very changes we were trying to force. By accepting people as they are, we create the safety they need to grow. By trusting their process, we help them trust their own inner wisdom. By loving without conditions, we help them discover their own worth. The journey from fixing others to healing yourself is not always easy. You'll face resistance from people who have become accustomed to your rescuing role. You might feel guilty when you stop taking responsibility for others' problems. You'll probably encounter your own deep fears about being unloved if you're not useful, about being rejected if you're not needed. But on the other side of this transformation awaits a life of unprecedented freedom and authenticity. You'll discover relationships based on genuine connection rather than mutual neediness. You'll find your own creativity and passion unleashed as you reclaim the energy you've been scattering. You'll develop a sense of inner authority and self-trust that no external validation can provide. Most importantly, you'll discover what Jung called your authentic self, the person you were meant to be beneath all the roles and masks and rescue patterns. This self doesn't need to fix anyone to feel valuable. This self doesn't need to control outcomes to feel safe. This self loves from overflow rather than emptiness, gives from abundance rather than neediness. As we conclude this exploration, I want to leave you with Jung's profound insight about the nature of transformation. He understood that real change happens not through force or manipulation, but through what he called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox and allow new possibilities to emerge from the tension between opposites. The paradox of fixing others is that the more we try to change them, the more they resist change. The more we focus on their problems, the more entrenched those problems become. The more we take responsibility for their growth, the less responsible they become for their own lives. But when we stop trying to fix others and turn our attention to our own healing, we create space for natural transformation to occur. We become living proof that change is possible, that healing is real, that growth happens when we stop forcing it and start allowing it. Your journey begins now in this moment, with the choice to redirect your healing energy inward. It begins with the recognition that the person most in need of your compassion, your wisdom, and your transformative love is the one reading these words right now. It begins with the understanding that your wholeness is the greatest gift you can give to a world full of people trying to fix each other. Stop trying to fix others and discover the profound joy of fixing yourself, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming. Not because you're inadequate, but because you're evolving. Not because others don't need help, but because the help they truly need can only come from someone who has done their own inner work. The world doesn't need more people trying to fix everyone else. The world needs more people committed to their own healing, their own growth, their own journey toward wholeness. When you become one of these people, you join what Jung would call the collective effort toward human consciousness, not through preaching or teaching or fixing, but through the quiet, profound work of becoming authentically yourself. This is your invitation to step off the exhausting treadmill of trying to change others and step onto the transformative path of changing yourself. This is your call to move from the illusion of control to the reality of influence, from the burden of responsibility for others to the joy of responsibility for yourself, from the prison of fixing to the freedom of being. The journey awaits. Your true self is calling, and the world is ready for the gift of who you're becoming when you stop trying to fix everyone else and start embracing the magnificent work of fixing yourself.